Hello, everyone, and welcome to All Blaze, No Glory, the podcast. This is a special feature podcast, which is just about the Rugby World Cup coming up and my thoughts on the 23 for the next Scotland game and who that should be. I put that out on Twitter. Before I get to that, though, as some of you may or may not know, I coach a women's ice hockey team, the Caledonia Steel Queens. They are the only women's team in the Central Belt of Scotland. They were the only women's university team, but we're now moving into the league, which means that they'll be available for more girls, because currently it's only university girls that really get to play in the competitions. So all women that want to play ice hockey now can play for them. As such, there's new challenges, there's travel, there's obviously higher calibre opposition. But the main one is financial. Obviously, the cost of trainings, the number of games has went up. I actually mentioned travel. So I'm not going to ask you to buy me a coffee or anything like that. I don't think I really merit it, to be honest. But if you can find it in your heart to buy a ticket from raffle for the Caledonia Steel Queens 50-50, I'm trying to make the pot as big as possible. The 50-50 is going to be going throughout the Fringe Festival, so it'll finish in 28 days from recording, which is the 31st of July. So it'll finish on at midnight on the 9th of August, so it finishes essentially on the 28th. So if you could go and buy a ticket, it's only £3. It's not a lot of money, and the more people buy, the bigger the pot gets, and the bigger the chances of big money. Yeah. Anyway, my 23 for the France game. Well, first, let's look at the Italy game and talk about some of the performers that I think that maybe made a claim. I don't think there was many. I think from watching the game and being there live, it was very, very dull at first. But a lot of World Cup warm-up games are very dull at first. They're either really exciting because the defences are bad, or they're really dull because the defences are quite good, but the attack has no impetus. So, I mean, for me, the sort of standout performances, I thought Healy did really well in his first start for Scotland. There was a couple of mistakes. The attack wasn't great, so you could part of that's on him. I don't think he got a lot of help from Ali Price, who I don't think had a great game, and then Dobie coming on, I don't think really helped him. Dobie's an interesting one for me in the World Cup because I think you're kind of almost giving away your game plan by having Dobie in the World Cup squad, the warm-up squad, because I really can't see how he gets in. Whereas if you had maybe a Velikot or a Scott Steele or Charlie Chapman or I'm trying to think if there's anyone else I can really think of. One of these people that've got a lot more experience or more game time during the season, I could see them maybe making a case for the World Cup. But I think having Dobie there seems like a bit of a token gesture to me. I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's got loads of potential, but he's played a lot of time in the wing for Glasgow. Horn and Price have been carrying the load from what I've seen. I'm not entirely sure why he was in the squad, if I'm being honest, and that's no reflection on him. As I say, I just don't get why you have all three Glasgow scrum halves there, that when you know that one of them's clear outright the third choice and doesn't have a lot of experience and doesn't seem to have a lot of game time as a scrum half this year. So yeah, anyway, that was a kind of side point where I was going. I don't think Healy was particularly helped by Price, who I didn't think had a great game. His kicking was pretty pants, if you ask me, and in general, he just apart from jumping over the seagull, he didn't really have a lot to write home about. In terms of the rest of the squad, as I say, Healy stood out. I thought Kinghorn really changed things when he came on. I actually thought the centres clicked more when Redpath came on for Harris. I thought Harris and McDowell defended really, really well, but attacking wise, they were a bit blunt. Darcy looked a little bit off pace, but still, pretty dangerous. I thought he would win that outside race, so he normally does. I don't know whether he didn't. I don't know whether he should have just backed himself and not tried to do that little goose step before he tried to round the centre for Italy, and that might have got him round there quicker, because that's the type of try you'd normally expect him to score. I thought Kyle Stein was serviceable, but maybe just lacks a bit of the sort of cutting edge that Darcy and Doohan have. So will definitely, for me, be in the World Cup squad because he's versatile. He can cover centre. as well as I think he can play a bit of fullback, but I don't think he's going to trouble the selectors for being in the 23 unless there's an injury to Duhan or Darcy. So anyway, the other standout performer was Rory Darge. I thought Rory Darge for me was actually the player of the game. I thought Healy getting it was a little bit of a kind of, well, it's his first start and he played really well, but I think Darge was immense in that game. Incidentally, I know a lot of people get on the case of having Sebastian, but I think having Sebastian, Jamie Batty and Stuart McInally kind of turned the scrum situation around, because the scrum was having a bit of a nightmare. Now, I appreciate the Italians have changed their scrum around and stuff as well, but they came on and were shoving the Italians around. McInally looked pretty good in the loose as well, and as well as that, Bayliss had a pretty solid game. Although the back row situation's a mess, and it's one that I dare not predict at this stage for the 33. In terms of the 23 I'd pick to play, sorry, the 33. In terms of the 23 I'd pick for France at home. Now, bear in mind, this is a home game, so you want to have the home crowd be happy. You want to get a bit of momentum. You can almost write off an away loss in the warm-ups, whereas I don't think you can so easily with a home loss, particularly when it doesn't look to me like France are going to put out, Dupont and their full Buna squad. So for me, it's very important. So this squad that I've picked is pretty strong, pretty settled, except maybe a couple of debate points. So the front row I've got is Pierre Schoeman, Stuart McInally and Xander Fagerson. Now, in the Scotland squad, we've obviously got Turner, we have Ashman, McInally and Dave Cherry, I think. For me, McInally came on and I think he played really, really well against Italy. And it's a last chance for him to maybe lay down a marker against a top side. I think on his day, McInally, for me, over the years, since he started playing as a hooker, has been possibly Scotland's best hooker in the loose, when running with the ball. And Turner's a close second. Turner is probably our nailed-on starter, but I don't see the point in playing him in a warm-up where we know he's going to be our starter. If we could test McInally, I think testing McInally as a starter against France is quite important, to see if he's our guy, because I think in terms of ceiling, McInally has a way higher ceiling than Cherry, and he's probably a better player right now than Ewan Ashman, who has a decent ceiling, but just I don't think is quite ready yet. So I'd pick McInally for this game and leave Turner out altogether, purely on the basis that we know what Turner can do. He can come in for the France away game or Georgia or whatever, but he's a pretty solid pair of hands, and I think it would be good to see what McInally can do as a starter. Xander and Schoeman are starting props, we know that. Second row, a little bit of an interesting one for me. I've picked Skinner and Richie Gray. I think Richie Gray, to be honest, has been a revelation since he got called back into the squad. So I don't think much needs to be said as to why you pick him. Skinner over Gilchrist, purely on the basis I think Skinner could do with seeing how he gets on with Gray in a high pressure situation. I think Skinner is more mobile than Gilchrist. I think he's almost as good a line-out operator as Gilchrist. So I know that Gilchrist, you've got the leadership role of Gilchrist, but I think that Skinner, I give him a start in this game and keep Gilchrist maybe back on the bench for it. Back row of Ritchie, Hamish, Watson and Dempsey. Not much to say about that. Jamie Ritchie's obviously the captain. So he's either going to be in the 6 or 7 shirt, you would imagine, in the big games in the World Cup. Hamish Watson, I think possibly is slightly behind Darge at the moment. And possibly there's maybe even thoughts of Ritchie starting at 7 and Fagerson being at 6 with Dempsey at 8. I think you've got to give Hamish Watson that run against the France side to see what he can do and to see where he is. Because he seems to have, declined a little bit from the Lions tour. I think he's maybe played a lot of rugby. I think we need to see where he is. He's had a bit of time off. Let's see if he's back to his Hamish Watson pinballing dominant self. Dempsey for me is just a big mean ball carrier who I'd like to see start against France. I think he would be good in that role, and I think this back row for me could be pretty exciting. Could be the back row for the South Africa game to start. Maybe with Mish giving way to Darge, maybe with Mish giving way to Fagerson, or maybe even Dempsey on the bench. I don't know, but that is my back row. 9 and 10, fairly obvious now who our starting 9 and 10 are. Ben White is surpassed Ali Price. I think Ben White is a really top prospect. He's got that ability to kick really well, but also that eye for the try line. I think Ali Price, I don't know if he's had it coached out of him, but he seems to have lost a little bit. And Finn Russell is obviously our starting 10, and he gets called Maverick, whatever, but he is our starting 10. He's phenomenal. Wings, I've got Duhan and Darcy. I think Darcy was brought off for the purpose of playing in the France game. I'd like to see him in the back three with Duhan. I think that's our strongest wing pairing that we can have. Darcy didn't have his best game against Italy. He missed a tackle against Monty Ione. He got his footing wrong for the tackle, and then, as I say, probably would have wanted to run in that other try, but he took his 2 tries well. That chase for the charge down, which almost led to the Stuart McInally try, which almost led to a try from Stuart McInally, there's few wingers in the world can do that. And then at fullback, I've got Kinghorn. This will probably divide the audience a little bit, but I think Kinghorn, when he came on, made a real difference to our attack. He was hitting lines, he was popping up as a second receiver. I think Kinghorn is our 15 now. I know that Ollie Smith's good, but I think Kinghorn is our 15. I think he's got a better boot than Ollie Smith as well. Ollie Smith seems to 2 or 3 times now, and I appreciate that. You're watching games, he's under pressure and stuff. It's even for me to sit here, it's a big fat forward that can kick anything, and say that Ollie Smith, his kicks are a bit low for my liking. They seem kind of duffed, almost like he's taking a big divot out the ground or thinned it or something. So I think he's for me, Ollie Smith is great. He's a prospect, but he's not quite there yet. And I think you've got to start Blair Kinghorn in the World Cup. If you're playing for South Africa, you've got Blair Kinghorn with Darcy and Duhan on the wings, I think. In terms of centre pairing, I did swither whether to suggest Redpath start at centre with Tuipulotu or with Hugh Jones, just to give him a start and see how he kicks on. But I went with the tried and tested Tuipulotu and Jones. It's the best centre pairing we've got in terms of chemistry at the moment. I personally would quite like to see Redpath with one of the two of them, just to see what the chemistry's like. Redpath's a bit more of a baller than Tuipulotu, and Jones in a sense of his distribution, but he's not as good a runner as either of them. So I'd like to see maybe him just in as an option, for an end of game option or whatever, to see how he gets on there. We'll probably take 4 centres, so you think Tuipulotu and Jones, probably Harris will go, but that 4th centre spot's between Redpath and McDowell for me. So I think that's going to be an interesting little tussle. But I think on balance, Redpath will probably hold on to it just based on experience. But we'll see. In terms of the bench, I've brought Ashman in at the reserve hooker position. I think we need to see what he's got potentially off the bench. We kind of know what Cherry's going to do, so you can save Cherry for the next France game and then still pick him on the World Cup squad. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference if he plays 1 or 2 games. You're going to know about Cherry, and we know about Turner, and we'd all imagine that Turner is the nailed-on starter or the nailed-on hooker that's definitely going, and it's a fight between the other 3 for the remaining sort of couple of spots. Batty and Nell, I thought Batty kind of outshone Sutherland at the weekend. I'm normally a big Sutherland fan, but I think Batty's kind of earned another stint from the bench. I don't see Batty as much of a starter. I think he's more of a kind of bench guy. He seems to have a lot of impact off the bench. He's quite a good scrummager to bring on at the end of the game as well. Um, and Nell is obviously a stalwart, great scrummager, and I think he's got to get a little bit of a run out before the World Cup, and I think the France at home games are the place to do it. He's probably another person that's maybe looking to retire at the end of the World Cup as well. So hopefully we'll get one last run out at Murrayfield, whether it's against France or Georgia. Gilchrist, I mentioned earlier why I picked Skinner to start over Gilchrist. I think Gilchrist has got to be on the bench and got to get a bit of a run so he can come on with either of those two. Fagerson I've picked over Darge, and I think there is an argument for Darge to go on the bench in this game, considering just how well he played at the weekend, how well he handled being captain at the weekend. But I think, for me, if Fagerson's not starting, he should be in the 23 at all times. He's a big game player, Fagerson. I don't think I've ever really seen a game where Fagerson's been bad. Certainly not for Scotland. He's good ball carrier. He's strong. He can get over ball as well, almost like a 7 at times. I think he covers the back three, the back row very, very well. So he can cover all three positions if you need him to. So I bring him in and give Darge a bit of a breather. They actually took no, they didn't. They took Crosby off, but I think for me, Fagerson should come in at 20 in the backup second row. There is a theory whether or not you do 6-2 split against like a France or South Africa, but I think for me you stick with 5-3. I don't think Scotland's strengths in having a 6-2 split. I think Scotland's strengths in having like forwards who are fit and can go on and make a bit of an impact and then chuck the ball about. And that's our best hope. We're not going to win arm wrestles against France and South Africa and Ireland. We might win by opening them up somehow. Horn for second scrum half. I actually think Horn was done dirty in the Six Nations and should have been on the bench for all of the games. I don't quite understand why they brought Price in over Horn. I thought Horn was brilliant in his cameos against England and the like. Healy, I think, should stay in the 23 for this. That's likely to be the best hope for him in the big game is to play as the second standoff the sub. If we are doing 5-3, then he comes in. If we're not doing a 5-3, then that's where the argument for maybe Hastings is. But even then, Healy has covered fullback for Munster. He's a 10, but he has covered there. So there's no harm in him being on the bench even in that situation, I think. And then 23 is a weird one because you could have a winger because you've got Russell who can cover centre, but then you've got Kinghorn who can cover the whole back three. You've got Jones who can go into full back. You've got Tuipulotu who's played wing. You've got options there. So I've went with Redpath because I think he's done quite well in his role coming on, and he's got a bit of a boot as well. And I think potentially if you're up in a game against like France or whatever, you want to close the game out. The likes of Healy and the likes of Redpath who've got like good kicks from hand on them, it could be quite helpful. Maybe bringing Redpath on for Jones, for example, and kicking Tuipulotu out to 13, or bringing him on for Tuipulotu and kicking corners between him and maybe Healy coming on. I don't know, but I think Redpath deserves another run out this upcoming weekend. Essentially, that's it. I just wanted to kind of go through it. I can't be bothered typing loads of tweets or X's. I just wanted to go through that. Hopefully I'll get to do it next week for the following France game. Maybe have a small review about that game as well. So yeah, that's it. In summary, shout out to the Seagull. Thought the Seagull did really well in the game. I actually hope the Seagull's okay. They get a bit of a kick in the head from one of the forwards. I can't remember who. I think Ali Price missed it, which was fortunate because if that Seagull went up, Ali Price was doing a face plant. So it was the Seagull was for 20 minutes the most entertaining part of that game. Do I think the Italy game is something we should dwell on? No. If you're thinking, oh, the Italy game was terrible, then I think you probably are right. But first World Cup warm-up, a lot of lads in their unusual positions. Darge captain for the first time, Healy's first start, Murphy Walker's first start, Cammy Henderson's first cap, Stafford McDowell's first cap and first start. Unusual centre pairing. It was a strange game in terms of who was playing where. So I think, let's not dwell on that. So anyway, that's me. As I say, guys, if you could go and look up raffle, I'll put the link. I always put the link on Twitter as well. And chuck it. It's £3 to enter. It's a 50-50 draw, so you get half the pot. Get your pals to enter, what have you. That would be grand. If not, thanks for listening. Cheers.